3 Books of Occult Philosophy by Agrippa. Book 1. Natural Magic. Chapter 1. The Plan of the Whole Work. Because there are 3 kinds of worlds, namely, the elemental, the celestial, and the intellectual, and every inferior one is governed by its superior and receives its influences, so that the archetype itself and the sovereign creator communicate the virtues of their omnipotence to us through the angels, the heavens, the stars, the elements, the animals, the plants, the metals, and the stones, having made and created all things for our use. This is why it is not without reason that magicians believe we can naturally penetrate through the same degrees and through each of these worlds, up to the archetypal world itself, the maker of all things, which is the first cause upon which all things depend and from which they proceed, and enjoy not only these virtues that the nobler things possess, but also procure new ones for ourselves. And this is what drives them to discover the virtues of the elemental world by means of medicine and natural philosophy, utilizing different mixtures of natural things, capturing the celestial virtues through the rays and influences of the celestial world, following the rules and discipline of astrologers and mathematicians. Finally, they strengthen and confirm all these things through certain holy ceremonies of religions and through the powers of the various intelligences. I shall endeavor to explain, in these 3 books, the order and the manner in which it is necessary to proceed in all these matters. The first book will contain natural magic, the second celestial, and the third ceremonial. But I do not know if a spirit as limited as mine, and a man lacking in study, will be pardoned for having undertaken since my youth, with such daring, a work so difficult and obscure. Therefore, I do not expect more faith to be assigned to what I have said and will say hereafter than is due, until it has been approved by the Church and by the assembly of the faithful. Chapter 2. Magic, its parts, and the exercise of its profession. Magic is a faculty of very great power, full of most elevated mysteries, and which embraces a most profound knowledge of the most secret things, their nature, their power, their quality, their substance, their effects, their difference, and their relation. Hence, it produces its marvelous effects by the union and application it makes of the different virtues of superior beings with those of the inferior. Therein lies the true science, the most elevated and mysterious philosophy. In a word, the perfection and realization of all natural sciences, since all regulated philosophy is divided into physics, mathematics, and theology. Physics teaches us the nature of things that exist in the world, their causes, their effects, their times, the difference of places, their properties, and their evolutions, and seeks with exactitude what their parts are and everything that serves their perfection, in accordance with this verse. How many are the existing elements that make up the composition of natural things? What is the effect of heat? What is the earth? What is the air? And what do they produce? Whence comes the origin of the heavens? From where comes the ebb and flow of the sea, and the rainbow of diverse colors? What confers upon the clouds the virtue of exciting loud thunder? Or from where arrives the lightning that falls through the air? What is the secret cause that makes us see meteors and comets? And what is the occult power that makes the earth tremble? From where come the mines of gold and iron, and the occult virtue of the secrets of nature? Physics, which is the speculative science of natural things, embraces all these matters, and what Virgil says in these verses. Whence comes this different genus of men and beasts, as well as the rain and the fire? From where come the earthquakes, and by virtue of what does the sea rise and spread despite the obstacles it may encounter, and inevitably retire into its center? What is it that makes us know the virtue of herbs, the courage and fury of ferocious beasts, the different kinds of fruits, stones, and reptiles. Mathematics, for its part, makes us evidently know nature extended in 3 dimensions and makes us understand the movement and course of the celestial bodies, in accordance with this verse. It makes us know how many stellar movements are ready, what causes the moon to darken, and what makes us lose the light of the sun. And what Virgil says, because the sun governs the world divided into certain parts in the 12 signs, it reveals the celestial and stellar routes, the eclipses of the sun and moon, the Pleiades, the Hyades, and the 2 bears. From there it derives that the sun sets so quickly in winter, and from there derives the length of the nights. All this is known through mathematics. Furthermore, it is for this reason that we can foresee the different changes of weather and know the season for sowing and harvesting, when it is suitable to take to the sea or cut the trees of the forests. Theology makes us know what pertains to God, what the angels, the intelligences, the demons, the soul, the thought, religion, the sacraments, the ceremonies, the temples, the festivities, and the mysteries are. It deals with faith, miracles, the virtue of words and figures, secret operations, and mysterious signs. And, as Apuleius said, it teaches us the rules of ceremonies, what religion ordains, what it permits and prohibits, and, to put it in a few words, magic alone embraces these 3 classes of sciences so powerful in prodigies, unites them and puts them into practice. It is, therefore, with reason that the ancients appreciated it as the most sublime and worthy of their veneration. The most celebrated authors studied it, bringing it to light. Among them chiefly distinguished themselves both Zamalxus and Zoroaster, whom many believe to be the inventors of this science. Abaris the Hyperborean, Charmandes, Damigeron, Eudoxus, and Hermippus have followed in their footsteps, and other illustrious authors such as Trismegistus, Mercurius, Porphyry, Iamblichus, Plotinus, Proclus, Dardanus, Orpheus of Thrace, Gog the Greek, Germa the Babylonian, Apollonius of Tyana, and Osthenes, whose books, fallen into oblivion, were commented upon and clarified by Democritus, also wrote much and well on this science. Furthermore, Pythagoras, Empedocles, Democritus, Plato, and many of the most famous philosophers made great journeys to learn it and, upon returning to their homes, noted how much they esteemed it, keeping it very secret. It is even said that Pythagoras and Plato caused diviners from Memphis to come in order to learn it, and that they traversed almost all of Syria, Egypt, Judea, and the schools of the Chaldeans so as not to overlook the great and mysterious princes of magic, and to possess that divine science. It is necessary, then, that those who wish to dedicate themselves to the study of this science possess perfectly the physics that explains the qualities of things and in which are found the secret properties of every being, that they know mathematics well, know the stars, their aspects, and their figures, since upon them depend the virtue and property of every elevated thing, and that they understand well the theology by which are known the immaterial substances that distribute and govern all things, in order to possess the faculty of reasoning of magic. For there can be no work of perfect magic, nor even of true magic, that does not embrace these 3 faculties in total. Chapter 3. The 4 elements, their qualities, composition, and mixture. There are 4 elements, the principal foundations of all corporal things, namely, fire, earth, water, and air, of which all visible things down here are composed, not by any mode of fusion but of transmutation and union, into which they resolve upon corrupting. None of the sensible elements is pure. They are mixed in greater or lesser proportion, and are capable of reciprocal transmutation. Thus, earth turns into mud. Dissolved, it becomes water. Condensed and thickened, it transmutes into earth, and upon evaporating by heat, it converts into air. This air, upon being heated too much, modifies into fire, and this fire, upon being extinguished, changes again into air, but upon being cooled after extreme heat, changes into earth, or into stone, or into sulfur, as is appreciated in the example of lightning. Plato believes that earth is totally transmutable, and that the other elements are transmutable into it and among themselves reciprocally. Earth is separated from the more subtle elements without transmutation, but upon dissolving or mixing in what constitutes dissolution, it returns to its first form. Each element has two specific qualities. The first is proper to it and inseparable. The other, as a mean between two, agrees with the next. For fire is hot and dry, earth is dry and cold, water is cold and moist, and air is moist and hot. And it is by two opposite qualities that the elements are contrary to one another, as fire with water and earth with air. The elements have yet another species of opposition among themselves. For some are heavy like earth and water, and others light like air and fire. This is why the Stoics call the former passive elements, and the latter active. Even Plato, following a new distinction, accords three qualities to each element, namely, to fire, brightness or penetration, rarefaction and motion, and to earth, darkness, thickness and rest. And it is due to these qualities that fire and earth are contrary. But the other elements receive their qualities from them, so that air takes two qualities from fire, rarefaction and motion, and one from earth, namely darkness. On the contrary, water takes two qualities from earth, darkness and thickness, and one from fire, namely motion. But fire is twice as rarefied as air, is 3 times more mobile and 4 times more active. Air is twice as active as water, is 3 times more rarefied and 4 times more mobile. Next, water is twice as active as earth, is 3 times more rarefied and 4 times more mobile. Thus, fire bears the same relation to air as air to water and water to air, and finally air to fire. These are the principles and the origin of all bodies, of their composition, of their virtues, and of their wonderful effects, so that whoever knows the properties of the elements, and of their mixtures, will easily be able to operate wonderful and astonishing things, perfecting himself in natural magic. Chapter 4. 3 different ways of considering the elements. There are 4 elements of which we have said that a perfect knowledge must necessarily exist to operate anything relating to magic. Each of these elements has 3 different qualities, constituting with 4 the number 12 and passing through the number 7 to the number 10. One arrives at the supreme unity upon which depend all virtues and wonderful effects. The elements of the first order are the pure ones, not compounded, which do not change nor suffer any mixture, and which are incorruptible. And it is only through them that all the virtues of natural things turn into their effects. Their virtues cannot be explained, for they can do all things upon all beings, and whoever ignores them cannot arrive at operating any wonderful effect. The elements of the second order are compounded, different, and impure. Therefore, they can be reduced by art to their pure simplicity, which, once acquired, has a virtue that accords perfection in everything over all things, to the most hidden operations of nature itself, and which is the foundation of all natural magic. The elements of the third order are not elements in their principle nor by themselves, but compounded, different, masters of diverse kinds of qualities, being able to change one into the other reciprocally. They are an infallible medium, and this is why they are called the middle nature or the soul of the middle nature. Few are those who understand their deep mysteries. On them depends, by certain orders, certain numbers and degrees, the perfection of every effect. They are wonderful in all things natural, celestial, and supercelestial, and full of mysteries that can operate in magic, both natural and divine. For it is through them that the relations, dissolutions, and transmutations of all things are established, and one arrives at the knowledge of the prediction of the future, at the invocation of beneficent spirits, and at the extermination of demons. No one must suppose that he will accomplish anything in the secret sciences of magic and of nature without these three classes of elements and without knowing them well. But whoever knows how to reduce the ones into the others, the impure into pure, the compounded into simple, and to discern their nature, virtue, and power in number, degrees, and order, will easily arrive at the perfect knowledge of natural things and of celestial secrets. Chapter 5. The wonderful natures of fire and earth. To operate all kinds of wonderful effects, Hermes says that fire and earth suffice. The former is active, the latter passive. Fire, says Dionysius, appears clearly over all things and in all things, and withdraws. It gives light to all things. Everything together remains hidden and unknown when it exists by itself without mixture of matter upon which it makes its action appear. It is immense and invisible. It disposes of itself in its own action. It is mobile, communicating itself in a certain way with everything that approaches it. It renews forces and preserves nature. It is illuminative, incomprehensible by the different splendor that surrounds it and with which it covers itself. It is clear, divided, rising and advancing upwards, tapering, elevated without any diminution, moving always from its impulse. It embraces the other elements, being ungraspable without having need of any of them, growing imperceptibly of itself, and making its magnitude appear in the objects with which it communicates. It is active, potent, present invisibly in all things. It does not admit of being neglected, reducing matter suddenly as if by a kind of vengeance, generally and appropriately in a natural mode, impalpable without diminution, although it communicates itself liberally with all kinds of things. Fire, says Pliny, is a portion of natural things, which is immense and of an infinite activity. Of it, it is not easy to say whether it is more fecund to produce than potent to destroy. Fire is of a particular genus. It penetrates through everything. As the Pythagoreans say, it dilates on high towards the heavens. It is illuminating. Restricted below, it is dark and mortifying, preserving in the middle a part of each of its properties. Fire is, therefore, unique in its species, acting differently upon the subject to which it couples, distributing itself differently over diverse things, as Cleanthes makes seen in Cicero. The fire of which we make use is, then, a fire that is found in all beings. It is in stones, since a stroke of steel makes it spring forth, in the earth which smokes upon being dug, in the water, since it heats springs and wells, in the air which we see heat up often. Finally, all animals and everything that has life and plants are nourished by heat, and everything that has life lives only due to the fire it encloses. The properties of fire below are the ardor that consumes everything and the darkness that renders everything sterile. But the celestial and shining fire drives away the dark spirits. Our fire, which possesses the resemblance and appearance of that superior light, of which it is said, I am the light of the world, effectuates the same. That is the true fire, the Father of lights, from whom we have received all good things, who came to scatter the splendor of his fire, communicating it first to the sun and the other celestial bodies, and influencing our fire with its capacity and properties through mediating instruments. Just as the spirits of darkness are stronger in the darkness itself, so too are the good spirits, who are the angels of light, who become stronger not only by the divine, solar, and celestial light, but also by the fire that exists among us. It is for this reason that the first authors of religions and ceremonies ordained that no prayers, psalmodies, or any ceremony be performed before lighting candles. Thus Pythagoras said that one should not speak of God without light. They also desired that candles and lights be kept near corpses to drive away evil spirits, and they maintained that these could not be sent away nor deposited in the earth except by means of mysterious ceremonies. The Omnipotent himself wished, in the ancient law, that all sacrifices offered to him be made with fire, and that this fire shine always upon the altar. This was customarily done by the Vestals among the Romans, who preserved and guarded it continuously. But the basis and foundation of all the elements is the earth, for it is the object, the subject, and the receptacle of all rays and all celestial influences. It encloses the seeds of all things and contains all seminal virtues. This is what causes it to be called animal, vegetable, and mineral, for upon being fecundated by other elements and the heavens, it is capable itself of engendering all things. It is susceptible to every kind of fruitfulness, and like the first mother, capable of bringing forth and giving endless birth and infinite growth to all things. Thus, it is the center, the foundation, and the mother of all. Even if its natural secrets are removed, purified, and subtilized, as soon as it is refreshed and exposed to the air, it instantly becomes fertile and fecund through the virtues of the celestial bodies, and by itself produces plants, worms, animals, stones, and metals. It holds within itself most potent secrets, once purified by the fire that makes it return to its ancient simplicity and purity. It is the first matter of our creation and the true remedy of our restoration and conservation. Chapter 6. The wonderful natures of water, air, and winds. The other two elements, namely water and air, are no less potent, and nature does not cease to effect admirable results through them. For water is so absolutely necessary that no animal can live without it, nor can any herb or plant produce if water does not moisten it. The seminal virtue of all things is found within it, beginning with animals, where it is evident that the seed is aqueous, and then in fruits and herbs. For although their seeds may be terrestrial, if water does not irrigate them, they could not become fecundated, whether this is accomplished by imbibing the moisture of the earth, the dew, the rain, or water that is thrown upon them expressly. For Moses describes earth and water as the only ones capable of producing the living soul. He attributes a double production to water, namely that of fishes and that of animals that fly through the air above the earth. Scripture even points out that water participates in the production of the earth, saying, "Why do the animals and plants not produce? Because God had not yet made it rain upon the earth." The power of this element is so great that it is impossible to be reborn spiritually without water, as Christ himself testified when speaking to Nicodemus. As for religion, its effects are also very great in expiations and purifications, and it is no less necessary than fire. It is useful in an infinity of things and is utilized in different ways. It is through it that everything existing in nature subsists, and it has the power to engender, nourish, make grow, and increase all things seen in the world. Therefore, Thales of Miletus and Hesiod established it as the principle of all things and called it the oldest and most potent of all the elements, for it rules the others. Since, as Pliny says, water devours the earth, extinguishes fire, rises up to the air, and upon reaching the clouds, becomes mistress of the sky, and upon falling gives birth to everything the earth produces. Pliny, Solinus, and many other historians described an infinity of wonders of water. Ovid also makes mention of its potent and marvelous virtues when he says, "What is the origin of the fact that the water of the river Ammon freezes in the middle of the day and becomes hot in the morning and evening? It is said that the waters of Athamas, upon approach, set the forest on fire until the moon is no longer seen. Among the Ciconians there is a river that hardens the entrails like stone if its water is drunk, and the things it touches it hardens like marble. Upon the coasts of the Thracians and Sybarites there are waters that turn hair the color of amber and gold, and what is most astonishing is that, if they are drunk, they can change not only the body but also the spirit. Who has not heard speak of the waters of Salmas and of the lakes of Ethiopia? He who has drunk them becomes furious, or falls into a surprising stupor. He who has drunk the water of the Clitorian spring comes to hate wine and wishes to drink nothing but pure water. But the river Lyncestis has very different effects, for whoever has drunk merely a little staggers more than if he had drunk a cup of pure wine. In Arcadia there is a lake that the ancients called Phaeneus, against whose waters one must be warned, for if they are drunk by night they cause harm, but if they are drunk by day they cause no harm whatsoever. Furthermore, Josephus reviews the admirable nature of a certain river between Arca and Raphania, towns in Syria, which overflows on Sunday and dries up during the other days of the week, apparently because its sources become blocked, returning to its ancient abundance of waters on the seventh day through the impenetrable effects of nature. It is for this reason that the inhabitants of that country gave it the name of the Sabbath River, because the Jews celebrate this seventh day. And Scripture makes mention of the pool of Jerusalem, in which whoever descended first, after the angel agitated the water, was cured of all kinds of ills. It is also written that there was a spring dedicated to the nymphs of Ionia, near the town of Heraclea, on the bank of the river Cithaeron, from which, after a sick person descended, he would come out perfectly healthy. Pausanias recounts that on Mount Lycaeus, in Arcadia, there is a spring called Agria, where the priest of Jupiter would go with sacrifices, holding in his hand an oak branch which he dipped into its waters in times of great drought. And upon the waters being agitated, vapors would emerge which, rising through the air, formed clouds that covered the whole sky, transmuting instantly into abundant rain that watered the whole earth. But among the many other authors, there is no one like Rufus, the physician of Ephesus, for writing admirably well on astounding things regarding the wonders of waters. It remains for me to speak of air. This is a vital spirit that penetrates all beings, making them all live and subsist, binding, moving, and filling everything. For this reason the Hebrew doctors do not include it among the elements, but consider it a medium and bond of the different beings, and a spirit that strengthens all the resources of nature. As it is the first to receive all the influences of the celestial bodies, communicating them to each of the other elements and to the mixed bodies, it likewise receives and retains, like a divine mirror, the impressions of all things, both natural and divine, as well as words or speeches, and carrying them along with it as it enters the bodies of men and animals, it supplies the matter for dreams, presages, and marvelous auguries. Hence it is, as has been said, that those who pass through a place where a man was slain, or where there is a freshly buried corpse, feel shaken by terror, for the air in that place overflows with the horrible species of such a homicide, which so moves them, fills them with those miasmas, and disturbs them whence dread is formed. Everything that acts promptly and causes a subtle impression shakes nature. For this reason, many philosophers have believed that the air was the cause of dreams and of many other impressions of the soul through the dilation of the species or likenesses that arrive from objects and words, passing through the air in a throng until reaching the senses and, finally, the imagination and the soul of the receiver, being received first upon the skin prepared to receive. For although the species of Things bring their own nature or that of themselves to the senses of men and animals. They may notwithstanding acquire any impression from the heavens when they are in the air, and different subjects feel them more than others according to their disposition when they reach their imagination. And thus a man may naturally, without any superstition, without the aid of any other spirit, communicate his thought to another, however distant they may be, in less than 24 hours, although the time cannot be precisely determined. I have seen this done and have done it myself. Likewise, this is what the abbot Trithemius performed. Plotinus also proves and teaches us the manner in which objects, both spiritual and corporeal, produce certain species, namely, by the influence of bodies upon bodies, and how they are strengthened in the air and present and manifest themselves to our sight and our senses, both through light and through motion. And we see, when the south wind blows, how the air condenses into small clouds in which very distant representations of castles, mountains, horses, men, and other things are reflected as in a mirror, which vanish as the clouds move away. And as for meteors, Aristotle shows that the rainbow is formed in a cloud of the air, in a certain manner like a mirror. And Albert says that representations of bodies are easily formed in air that is humid, in the same way as representations of things in things. And Aristotle recounts that he knew a man who, having weak sight, used the nearby air as a mirror, and that his visual ray was reflected in it. He could not understand this and believed that his shadow marched before him, seeing that his head preceded him in the march. In the same way, all manner of representations are employed in the air, however distant they may be, by means of certain mirrors and outside of these mirrors, which the ignorant, upon seeing them, judge to be figures of demons or spirits, though they are but immediate representations without any life. And it is said that in a dark place, where there is only a very small hole through which a ray of sun may enter, if white paper or a joined mirror is placed in that hole, one sees on that paper everything that the sun illuminates and accomplishes outside. There is another very admirable prodigy. If someone, after painting a portrait or writing some words in a certain manner, exposes this at night, in clear weather with a full moon to its rays, another person may see and read all that, informing themselves of those things, in the circumference or circle of the moon, for its representations rise and multiply in the air, which is very useful for making news known in the case of besieged places or towns. This is a secret that Pythagoras practiced. In ancient times, known today by some persons, as I myself know it. All these things and a number of other more considerable ones are founded on the nature of the air and draw their principles from mathematics and optics, and just as these species are reflected to the sight, the same occurs to the hearing, since it is seen by means of the echo. However, there are yet other more particular secrets, by which a man may hear what another says, and to the ear, or in private and in secret. From the air also come the winds, which are nothing but agitated and excited air. There are 4 principal winds, which blow from the 4 corners of the sky, namely, Notus from the side of the south, Boreas from the side of the north, Zephyrus from the side of the west, and Apeliotes or Eurus from the side of the east. These are enunciated thus in these 2 verses of Pontano. Boreas blows from highest heaven, Notus from lowest Olympus. Zephyrus has settled in the west, Eurus comes from the east. Notus, the wind of the south, is cloudy and humid, hot and unwholesome. St. Jerome calls it rain in pitchers. Ovid describes it in this manner. The wind Notus flies with his wet wings, covers his terrible face with darkness like pitch. His heavy beard makes the water run down his white hair. The clouds stop upon his forehead. His wings and his chest make the water stream down. But Boreas, contrary to Notus, is the wind of the north, violent and noisy. It expels the clouds, quiets the air, freezes the water. Ovid makes him soliloquize thus, I have my own power. With it I expel and make the sad and submissive clouds tremble before my command. I fell the trees, I harden the vapors, I cover the earth with hail. I am always the same until I meet the other winds under the vault of the heavens, for there is my plain. I agitate myself with such fierceness that the air found amidst our blows resounds, cleaving the concavity of the clouds with lightning. It is I who, compressed in the depths of the earth's caverns, disquiet the manes and make the earth tremble. Zephyrus, which is also called Favonius, is a very light wind that blows from the west, and is sweet, cold, and humid. It softens the rigors of winter and produces all the herbs and flowers. Eurus, opposite to that one which is also called Subsilanus and Apeliotes, is the wind of the east. It is a watery, cloudy, swiftly devouring wind. Ovid speaks of all these winds in these terms. Eurus withdrew toward the dawn and the realms of the Nabateans and Persia, and the ridges lying beneath the morning rays. The west, and the shores that grow warm beneath the setting sun, are nearest to Zephyrus. Boreas seized the Scythian land and the 7 Triones, dreadful. The opposite region is drenched with continual clouds and is soaked by rainy Auster. Chapter 7. The kinds of compounds, the relation they have with the elements, and the relation they have with the soul, the senses and manners. After the 4 simple elements, there immediately follow the 4 kinds of perfect compounds, which are stones, metals, plants, and animals. And although all the elements serve in the composition of each one, each compound follows a particular element and possesses more of its qualities. For all stones come from the earth, since they are heavy and descend to the depths, and dryness dominates in them in such a way that it is impossible to turn them liquid. But metals are aqueous and melt, and as physicists and chemists declare upon performing experiments, they are engendered by a thick and viscous water, or by quicksilver which is also aqueous. Plants have such a relation with the air that they could not sprout nor ripen except in the air. Thus all animals draw their strength from fire and their origin from the heavens, and fire is so natural to them that without it they cannot live. In short, each of these genera is distinguished by the degrees of the elements. For, among stones, it is said that the dark and heavier ones come from the earth, and the transparent ones and those composed of water come from the water, such as crystal, beryl, and pearls and shells, and those that swim in the water are composed of air and are spongy, such as pumice and tufa. Therefore, it is understood that those composed of fire are such as brick and lime. Likewise, among metals, some are composed of earth, namely lead and silver. Furthermore, of water, such as mercury. Of air, such as copper and tin, and of fire, such as gold and iron. In plants, the roots correspond to earth by their thickness, the leaves to water by their juice, the flowers to air by their subtlety, and the seeds to fire by their generative spirit. Likewise, there are the hot, cold, moist, and dry, which take their names from the qualities of the elements. Among animals, there are those in which earth dominates, and which sustain themselves in the bowels of the earth, such as worms, moles, and many animals that crawl. Likewise, there are those formed of water, such as fish, others in which air dominates and which cannot live outside of it, others in which fire dominates, such as salamanders and cicadas, and others that possess the heat of fire, such as pigeons, ostriches, lions, and those which the wise man calls beasts that breathe out a vapor of fire. Furthermore, among animals, the bones have a due relation to earth, the flesh to air, the vital spirit to fire, and the humors to water, which are also found in the elements. Choler is like fire, blood like air, phlegm like water, and black bile like earth. Finally, in the soul, following the opinion of Augustine, the understanding is like fire, reason like air, imagination like water, and the senses like earth. This same order is found in the senses, for the sense of sight participates in fire. Indeed, it does not perform its operations except through fire and light. Hearing participates in air, since sound is nothing but the percussion of the air. As for smell and taste, they relate to water, without whose moisture there is neither flavor nor odor. Finally, touch is totally terrestrial and relates to denser bodies. This analogy is found even in the operations of man, for slow and solid movement relates to earth. Fear and sluggishness with laziness have a relation to water, a cheerful and amiable humor to air, and an impetuous and choleric nature resembles fire. The elements hold, therefore, the first rank in all beings. They are in every composition and in the properties, and communicate their virtues to them. Chapter 8. The manner in which the elements are found in the heavens, in the stars, in the spirits, in the angels, and in God Himself. It is the opinion of the Platonists that, just as in the archetypal world all things are found in all, the same occurs with the corporeal world, with the difference that they are found in different manners, namely, according to the nature of the subjects that receive the influences or impressions. Thus the elements are not only in all things down here, but also in the heavens, in the stars, in the spirits, in the angels, and in God Himself, who is the Creator and the author of all things. However, the elements are found in this inferior world as gross forms and material immense elements. The elements are found naturally in the heavens, and in all their force, namely, in a celestial and more excellent manner such as is not found in anything that exists beneath the moon. For everything is found in its perfect purity, the solidity of earth without which there is nothing gross or material, the ductility of air without thickness or any division, the heat of fire without burning, which does nothing but shine and vivify. Among the stars, Mars and the sun possess fire, and those that dwell in the eighth heaven possess earth. Likewise the moon, which many judge to be composed of water, because it draws the waters from heaven and earth, which it communicates to us by being imbued through its proximity. Among the constellations there are also those in which fire dominates, in some air, in others earth, and in others water. And it is the elements that govern the heavens, distributing their four qualities to them all, following their three different orders and the beginning, the middle, and the end of each element. Thus Aries takes its beginning from fire, Leo, its progress and its increase, and Sagittarius its end. Taurus draws its beginning from earth, Virgo its progress, and Capricorn its end. Gemini draws its beginning from air, Libra, the progress, and Aquarius its end. Cancer takes its beginning from water, Scorpio, the progress, and Pisces the end. The elements form, then, and compose by their mixture all bodies with the planets and the signs. The same occurs with spirits, so that some resemble fire, others earth, others air, and others water. This is why it is also said that the four rivers of the infernal regions possess, namely, Phlegethon, fire, Cocytus, air, Styx, water, and Acheron, earth. It is even seen in the scriptures the fire that the condemned suffer, and the eternal fire to which the cursed are condemned. The Apocalypse makes mention of a lake of fire, and Isaiah says of the condemned, God shall strike them with corrupt air, and Job says, they shall pass from snow waters to extreme heat, and he even expresses that there is a land of darkness and misery covered by the shadow of death. Finally, the elements are found likewise in all that exists of the celestial, in the angels, and the blessed intelligences, since the solidity of essence, and the strength of the earth are found there, for they are the solid seats of the Lord, as well as clemency and love, virtues of purifying water. This is why the psalmist calls them the waters, when he says to God speaking of the heavens, "You who govern the waters that are above them." There exists in them the air of a subtle spirit, and the love of fire which shines. That is why the Holy Scriptures call them the wings of the winds, and the psalmist, making another mention of them, says, "You who make the spirits your angels, and the burning fire your ministers." In the angelic orders there are also those that correspond to fire, which are the seraphim, the virtues and the powers, the cherubim to earth, the thrones and the archangels to water, the dominions and the principalities to air. Is there not something so touching relative to the author of the world, that the earth opens and begets the Savior, and is he not called in the same Holy Scripture, fountain of living water, purifying and regenerating, and breath of life? Do Moses and Paul not say that he is a consuming fire? No one can, therefore, disagree that the elements are found everywhere, and in all things in different manners. Firstly, in all things that this inferior world contains, but they are impure and gross. In celestial things they are purer and clearer, and alive in that which is above the heavens, perfect, blessed, and complete in all ways. The elements are, then, in the archetype the ideas of all that is produced, in the intelligences the powers, in the heavens the virtues, and in all that exists down here the gross and imperfect forms. Chapter 9. How the virtues of natural things are born from the elements. Some natural virtues are purely elemental, such as those of heating, cooling, moistening, drying, and are called the first operations or qualities, which follow the act. For these qualities alone and by themselves change the whole substance of all things. Any other qualities could not do this. Moreover, they exist in things and proceed from the elements that compose them. They extend further and possess something more than their first qualities, such as those that ripen, digest, resolve, soften, harden, cleanse, corrode, abrade, open, evaporate, comfort, emoliate, unite, compress, attract, dilate, and many others. For every elemental quality must perform many operations in a mixture that it does not perform alone, and these operations are called second qualities, because they follow the nature and the proportion of the mixture of the first virtues, just as this is treated simply in books of medicine. Just as the change occurring in the substance of matter to a certain point is the operation of natural heat, so too is hardening, which is the operation of cold, and congelation and the rest, and sometimes these operations are effected upon a determined member, such as those that provoke urine or milk and menstruations, and these qualities are called third, which follow the second, as the second follow the first. This is why there are many diseases that proceed from these first, second, and third qualities, and which are cured by them. Likewise, there are many highly admired things made artificially, such as the fire that consumes water, called Greek fire, of which Aristotle teaches us different compositions in the particular treatise he compiled. In the same way is made the fire that oil extinguishes and cold water kindles when it falls like dew, and this fire is kindled by rain, by wind, or by the sun, and turns into a fire called burning water, the composition of which is very well known, and it consumes nothing but itself. And there also exist fires that are not extinguished, incombustible oils, perpetual lamps that cannot be put out by wind or water, which would clearly seem incredible, had not that famous lamp been seen which once burned in the temple of Venus, in which burned the asbestos stone that, once kindled, could never be extinguished. On the contrary, wood or other combustible things are prepared so that fire can do nothing to them, and means are arranged whereby one may carry a red-hot iron in the hands, or handle molten metal, or enter totally into the fire without experiencing any harm, and many other similar things. And there is a kind of flax, which Pliny calls asbestos, and the Greeks call asbestos, which no kind of fire can burn. Regarding this, Anaxilos says that a tree covered with that material can be cut without any noise being heard. Chapter 10. The Occult Virtues of Things. There exist other virtues in things which belong to no element, such as that of preventing the effect of wine, warding off anthrax, forging iron, or some other, and that virtue is the consequence of the species or the form of things, causing a small quantity to produce not a small effect, which is not found in the quality of an element. For these virtues, being very formal, can produce great effects with the least matter. On the contrary, the elemental quality needs much matter to act in great measure. The occult properties are called thus because their causes do not manifest and because the human spirit cannot penetrate them. This is why only philosophers, through long experience plus natural reason, were able to acquire a part of the knowledge, for just as meats are digested in our stomach by the heat we know, in the same way they are transformed by a certain occult virtue we ignore, not by heat, because thus they would be transformed faster in fire than in the stomach. The same occurs with things of elemental qualities that we know, and certain virtues that are natural to them and born with them, which we admire, and of which we are astonished not to possess the knowledge or not to have seen them, as is the example of the phoenix bird, which is reborn from itself, as Ovid says, "There is a bird the Assyrians call the phoenix, which is reborn from itself," and he adds, "The Egyptians gather to view the marvelous thing with admiration, and show at once their rejoicing before this unique bird." Matrius receives extreme admiration from Greeks and Romans when saying that he grazed a wild beast that devoured itself. And until today there are people who wish to know what the beast of Matrius was. No one would fail to be astonished that there exist fish underground, of which Aristotle, Theophrastus, and the historian Polybius have made mention, and that Pausanias spoke to us of certain stones that sing. Therefore, these are operations of the occult virtues. Thus it happens that the ostrich damages its stomach not at all with a hot iron, and digests cold iron and even the hardest kind, to nourish its body. Likewise, the little fish called Echinias holds back the impetuosity of the winds in such a way, and tames the fury of the sea, however strong and violent the storms may be, and whatever the quantity of sails the ships may use, while however little it touches them, it stops them and makes them lag so that they remain without movement. Similarly, salamanders and the little beasts called pyrosti live in fire, and although it seems they are consumed, nothing prevents them from being preserved. There is also a certain resin, with which they say the Amazons rub their arms, which preserve them from being damaged or harmed by iron or fire. It is known that Alexander the Great rubbed the Caspian gates, which were of bronze, with that resin. Even it is written that Noah's Ark, built thousands of years ago and which still lasts upon the mountains of Armenia, was composed of this resin. There are a quantity of other marvels of this class, almost incredible, yet known by experience itself. Thus ancient histories make mention of satyrs, animals with a figure half man and half beast, but endowed with reason, of which St. Jerome says that one of them spoke to St. Anthony the Hermit, condemning in himself the error of the Gentiles in worshipping animals, and begging him to pray to God for him. And he assures that, on another occasion, one of them appeared in public, being at once sent to Constantine. Chapter 11. Method of preparing the infusion of occult virtues into the species of things. Through ideas. By means of the soul of the world. From the rays of the stars. And the things that most possess this virtue. The Platonists express that all things here below receive their ideas from the superior ideas. The definition of the idea consists in its principle in a form that is above souls and spirits, which is one, simple, pure, immutable, indivisible, incorporeal, eternal, and the nature of all ideas is the same, and they place the ideas in the good itself, that is to say, in God, and they want them to be different and distinct among themselves by means of the cause by certain relative reasons, and that all that exists in the world lacks change and is unique, and that all things agree among themselves so that God is not a different substance. They locate them in the intelligence, that is, in the soul of the world by forms properly different, mutually absolute, so that in God all ideas are one form. But many enter into the soul of the world and into other spirits, whether they are united and are a body, or are separated. They locate different forms through a certain participation and degrees in an ascending scale. They are included in nature as inferior seeds of forms infused by the ideas. Finally, they penetrate into matter as shadows. It is added that in the soul of the world there are as many seminal ways of things as there are ideas in the divine spirit, by which the stars and figures were created in the heavens, impressing all their properties upon them. All virtues and properties of the inferior species depend on these stars, on these figures, and on these properties, such that every species has a celestial figure that befits it, from which reaches it an admirable power to act. And the species receives this quality which is proper to it from its idea through the seminal modalities of the soul of the world. For ideas are not only causes of being but also causes of every virtue found in such a species. And this is what many philosophers say, that by certain virtues which have an assured and stable manner, which are not fortuitous nor casual, but efficacious, potent, and infallible, they do nothing useless nor in vain. These virtues are the operations of the ideas, which do not vary except by accident, and this only due to the impurity and inequality of matter. For in this way, things of the same species possess virtue in greater or lesser measure according to the purity or confusion of the matter. Hence the Platonists have coined a proverb to the effect that celestial virtues were infused into matter according to good qualities. Virgil said, "Things here below receive as much quantity of force and virtue from the heavens as matter is disposed to receive." This is why things to which the idea of matter is least accorded, that is to say, those that receive more of the appearance of separated bodies, have larger and more efficacious virtues in operation, similar to the operation of the idea of separated bodies. We know, then, that the situation and the figure of the celestial bodies is the cause of every mobile force found in the inferior species. Chapter 12. How the virtues of the same species influence different individuals. The figure and the situation of the celestial bodies and of the stars accord to many individuals singular virtues so marvelous regarding the species. For as soon as any known individual begins to exist under a fixed horoscope, or under some celestial constellation, it contracts from that moment a certain admirable particular virtue of acting, and of suffering or receiving, in addition to that relative to its situation and species. This occurs as much through the influence of the celestial bodies as through the correspondence, submission, and obedience of the matter of the things that are produced and generated in the soul of the world, which bears the same relationship as the obedience of our bodies toward our souls, for we feel in ourselves what each form makes us conceive. Our bodies move toward delectable things, uniting with them or fleeing from them. The same often happens to celestial souls when they conceive different ideas. Then matter moves in relation to them. So that in nature there are many things that seem to be prodigies of the imagination of the superior movements. This causes not only natural things but also, very often, artificial things to receive different virtues, and above all when the soul of the operating body attaches itself to that which influences it. This is what made Avicenna say that. Do you want access to this and all the complete audiobooks on the channel, plus the ebook version? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code in the left corner of the screen to access our library, where you can listen to your favorite esoteric books without ad interruptions, lock your screen, or use other apps while the narration plays, and even download the ebook version to follow along as you listen. Listen on your computer via web browser, or download the app from the Play Store. After subscribing, you will receive an email with your login details, password, and step-by-step instructions on how to access the books through the Hotmart app.